A light breeze was passing through the deserted park, lifting the dry leaves into small whirlwinds under a gray and threatening sky. Luca, a 3-year-old boy blind from birth, was playing quietly near his mother. The park, surrounded by a dense forest, seemed like a safe place to spend the afternoon. But in an instant, everything changed. Luca's mother had become distracted while answering the phone, lowering her gaze for just a few seconds. When she looked up again, the child was no longer beside her. Her voice cracked in panic. "Luca, where are you?" The little boy, curious about a distant sound, had wandered off among the trees, unaware of the danger. Alone and vulnerable, he began to feel the absence of his mother. With his heart pounding, he started calling her, "Mom! Help!" But in the thick of the trees, his voice got lost, overwhelmed by the sound of the leaves and the wind. He had no idea where he was or which direction to take. Fear enveloped him, his outstretched hands searching for a point of reference, but all around him was emptiness. Just when it seemed that little Luca was completely abandoned, an unexpected presence appeared. A stray dog, with rough fur and deep eyes, emerged from behind a bush. It was thin, but in its movements, there was a determination that conveyed something unique. The dog watched the boy, as if understanding his desperate situation. The dog barked once, in a low and firm tone. Luca, hearing the sound, froze. There was something in that bark that didn't frighten him but reassured him. As if that mysterious animal were there to help him. The dog slowly approached, brushing the boy's hand with its nose, and Luca felt a strange sense of comfort. "Who are you?" Luca whispered. The unexpected meeting between the boy and the dog marked the beginning of something incredible. While the mother continued searching desperately for her son, the stray dog seemed to have a plan. Luca's fate was now in its paws. Luca, still disoriented and scared, felt the warmth of the dog's breath near his hand. He couldn't see its appearance, but he sensed a reassuring and almost protective presence. The dog let out a soft whine, as if inviting him to follow. Somehow, the boy understood the message. "Do you want to help me?" Luca asked, his voice trembling. The dog barked again, this time with a decisive tone, and began walking slowly, stopping every few steps to make sure the boy was following. Luca clung to the trust that the mysterious animal inspired in him and stretched out his hand, following the sound of its paws on the ground. Meanwhile, Luca's mother, Francesca, was wandering through the park, calling for her son. Her heart was a turmoil of fear and guilt. Every passing second seemed like an eternity. Several people in the park had joined her search, but no one had seen the boy. The dog suddenly stopped, its body stiffening. A sudden noise came from the underbrush, the crackling of broken branches. The boy, unaware of the danger, kept moving forward, but the dog positioned itself between him and the source of the sound, growling low. Suddenly, a large deer emerged from the dense trees, as frightened as they were. The animal stopped for a moment, then darted away, disappearing into the bushes. The dog, after ensuring the danger had passed, returned to Luca and licked his hand, as if to reassure him. "What was it?" Luca asked, sensing the dog had protected him. But the dog simply nudged him gently with its nose, guiding him again toward a safe direction. One of the men helping with the search noticed small footprints in the wet ground. Francesca clung to that hope and started following the tracks. "Luca, are you there?" she cried, her voice breaking. The dog, hearing the call, stopped and barked loudly, a sound that seemed to answer the boy's mother. "Mom!" Luca cried, recognizing her voice. But they were still not out of danger. Between the child and the mother was a small stream, with unusually swift waters due to the recent rains. Luca was too close to the edge and didn't realize it. The dog, sensing the danger, moved quickly. It positioned itself between Luca and the stream, barking furiously to attract the attention of the mother and rescuers. Francesca, guided by the sound, arrived just in time to see the dog gently push Luca back with its nose, moving him away from the slippery edge. Francesca ran to her son, tears streaming down her face. She grabbed him and hugged him tightly, still trembling from the fear. "Thank God, Luca. You're safe." Then she turned toward the dog, which was watching the scene with an almost satisfied expression. Francesca kneeled and reached out to him. "Thank you. I don't know who you are, but you saved my child." The dog looked at her, wagging its tail slightly, but maintaining a distant air, almost as if it knew its mission was not yet over. Francesca, still kneeling beside Luca, kept looking at the dog in disbelief. There was something extraordinary about this stray. It didn't act like an ordinary animal, but like a guardian sent specifically to protect her son. As she tried to reassure Luca, the dog perked up its ears, suddenly jumping to its feet. A rustling came from the underbrush ahead. Francesca stiffened, her protective instincts kicking in. "What is it?" she whispered, clutching the child. The dog positioned itself in front of them, its body as taut as a violin string. Then it barked loudly, the sound echoing through the trees. The mother, scared but determined, picked up Luca and began following the dog, which seemed intent on taking them away from the danger. As they moved through the forest paths, Francesca began to hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps. They were not alone. She turned around but saw nothing through the thick trees. The dog, however, was growling softly, maintaining a defensive stance. "Let's get out of here, quickly," she whispered, picking up the pace. Suddenly, a man emerged from the shadows. He was a hunter, with a rifle slung over his shoulder. "Is everything all right, ma'am?" he asked, his tone ambiguous. Francesca didn't respond immediately, too frightened. "Yes, we're just trying to get out of the park," she finally answered, her voice unsure. The hunter stared at her for a moment, then his eyes fell on the dog. "Is that your dog?" he asked, his tone too curious. Francesca hesitated. "No, but it saved my son." The hunter smiled faintly, but there was no kindness in his eyes. "Strange to find a dog like that around here. He could be useful." The dog, sensing something was wrong, quickly moved in front of Francesca and Luca, growling fiercely. The hunter took a step back, surprised by the animal's aggression. "I didn't mean any harm," he said, raising his hands, but Francesca didn't trust him. The dog continued to push them forward, guiding them toward the exit of the woods. Francesca felt increasingly safe following the animal, which seemed to have an unshakable determination. Luca, meanwhile, had calmed down in her arms. "Mom, he's an angel," the child whispered innocently. Luca's words echoed in Francesca's heart. How could an abandoned animal show so much courage and intelligence? A few minutes later, they reached a more open path, where they finally spotted some lights in the distance. It was the park exit. Francesca turned toward the dog and knelt beside him. "I don't know who you are or where you come from, but we owe you everything." "Thank you." The dog barked softly, wagging its tail gently. Just as Francesca thought their adventure was over, Luca knelt next to the dog, extending his small hands toward him. The dog approached, allowing Luca to stroke his muzzle. Luca laughed, a clear sound that brought a bit of light to that tense afternoon. "Can I keep him, Mom?" "He's my angel." Francesca hesitated for a moment, but deep inside, she already knew the answer. This dog was not simply a stray. He had become part of their family. After finally leaving the forest, Francesca, Luca, and the dog found themselves on the main road leading to the park's parking lot. The sunset light illuminated the path, bringing with it a sense of relief. But the calm didn't last long. The dog suddenly stopped, its ears perked. It began barking toward the opposite side of the road, its body stiff as a statue. Francesca, who had just let her guard down, felt a shiver run down her spine. "What's going on, friend?" she whispered, following the dog's gaze. From behind a bush, another figure appeared. It was the same hunter they had encountered earlier, but this time his face showed a different expression. He had put down his rifle, but was holding a small flashlight, aiming it directly at them. "Ma'am, I didn't mean to scare you earlier," he said in a calm voice, but one filled with tension. "That dog, does it belong to someone?" Francesca stood up, holding Luca's hand tightly. I don't know. It saved my son. The hunter took a step forward, studying the dog. This is no ordinary dog. I've never seen one like it around here, but it looks trained. It might have escaped from a special place, or belonged to someone looking for it. Francesca's heart sank. What if the dog wasn't really a stray? Maybe he had a family, or someone who was desperately searching for him. But before she could answer, the dog growled again, positioning itself between her and the man. The hunter stopped, raising his hands to calm the dog. All right. I don't mean any harm, he said with an uncertain smile. Francesca started to relax, but the hunter added something that sent a chill through her. You know, a few months ago, a truck carrying animals was involved in an accident near this area. Some of those dogs escaped, and they say one of them was special, trained for rescue missions. Francesca's heart raced. Could it be true? Was this dog really a hero that had escaped from an accident? She looked at the animal, who now seemed calm but always vigilant, and began to wonder. How do you know that? She asked, her voice trembling. The hunter shrugged. I know because I work with a rescue team. I didn't want to scare you, but when I saw that dog, well, it seemed familiar. Francesca didn't know what to think. But Luca was determined. He didn't escape, Mom. He's here for us. He's my angel. As they spoke, a car slowly approached down the road. The headlights illuminated the scene, and Francesca noticed there was a man inside who seemed to be looking for something. The dog turned toward the car, barking loudly. The car stopped beside them, and the window rolled down. That's Max, the man exclaimed. Francesca looked at him in confusion. Max? You know him? Yes. He's the dog I lost during that accident the hunter was talking about. He's a trained rescue dog, but we haven't found him since the accident. The dog slowly approached the car, looking at the man with attentive eyes. But instead of jumping in or immediately recognizing him, he returned to Luca's side, positioning himself next to him as if to protect the child. The man got out of the car and knelt before the dog, trying to get his attention. Max, it's me. Come home. The dog looked at him but stayed by Luca's side. Francesca felt torn. If the dog truly belonged to that man, he had the right to take him back. But on the other hand, the bond that had formed with Luca was undeniable. I don't know, Francesca said, looking at the dog. He saved my son. Maybe he's here for a reason. The parking lot, now bathed in the evening twilight, had become the scene of an emotional confrontation. Francesca, the man who claimed to be the dog's owner, and the hunter were all standing still, while the dog remained by Luca's side, almost as if to show where his place was. Luca, with his innocence, reached out a hand toward the dog and said, You'll stay with me, right? Don't go away. Francesca watched the scene with a heavy heart. She couldn't ignore the deep bond the dog had developed with her son, but at the same time, the man in front of her seemed genuinely attached to the animal. I don't want to cause any problems, the man said in a softer tone. Max is a trained dog, and he's always been special. If he's chosen to stay with your son, there's a reason. But I just want to make sure you know he's not a stray. He's been with me for years, and I've been desperately searching for him since he disappeared. Francesca felt torn. The dog, who kept watching the man attentively, seemed conflicted too. For a moment, he approached the man, sniffed him, and barked softly, as if to recognize him. But immediately after, he returned to Luca's side, sitting next to the child as if to say, Now my mission is here. The hunter, who had been silent up until then, intervened with a reflection. You know, animals have a special instinct. Max has chosen to stay with this boy, maybe because he knows he's needed here. But it's also true that, if he's really a trained dog, he could help many other people. These words struck Francesca deeply. She knelt beside the dog and stroked his head. You're really a hero, you know that? But I don't know what the right thing to do is for you. Luca interrupted the moment, hugging the dog. Mom, he doesn't want to leave. He saved me. He's my friend." The man, seeing Luca's emotion and the evident bond between the child and the dog, stepped back. "Maybe we can find a solution," he said, looking at Francesca. "I could leave him with you for a while and come back to visit him. It's clear that right now, he feels his place is here." Francesca was surprised by those words. She hadn't expected the man to be willing to part with the dog, even temporarily. "That would be wonderful," she said, feeling a wave of relief. "I don't want to take something precious from you, but this dog has done so much for us today. We can't just let him go." The man nodded slowly. "Max has always been an extraordinary animal. If he's chosen you, there's a reason. But I'd just like to be able to see him again." In the following minutes, while the hunter stepped away to leave them to discuss, Luca and the dog continued to play together in the parking lot. The child laughed, stroking the animal's fur, and seemed to have forgotten all the fear he had just felt. Francesca watched the scene with a mix of joy and relief. The dog wasn't just a savior for Luca, but seemed to have brought a sense of hope and protection into their lives. "Maybe he's truly a gift," she thought to herself. The man who claimed to be the dog's owner approached once more, this time with a more serene smile. "I'll leave you my number. If you need help with him, call me. But promise me you'll take care of him like he deserves." Francesca nodded. "You can count on it. We'll do everything we can for him." In the days following the incredible meeting, Francesca and Luca brought the dog, who they now officially called Max, into their daily life. Max quickly adapted, showing not only affection but also extraordinary intelligence. However, not everything went smoothly. One evening, while Francesca was putting Luca to bed, the dog started acting strangely. He was pacing back and forth in front of the living room window, barking outside. Francesca pulled back the curtains to see what was troubling him, but saw nothing. "What's wrong, Max?" she asked, stroking him to calm him down. Max stopped barking but remained still, staring at a spot in the darkness. It was as if he sensed something that Francesca couldn't perceive. Despite her unease, she decided to ignore the dog's behavior, thinking it was just nervousness. But the next morning, as she walked Luca to daycare, Francesca noticed a suspicious man who seemed to be following them. He had a furtive air and was trying not to draw attention, but Max noticed him immediately. The dog positioned himself between the man and Francesca, growling with a ferocity he had never shown before. "Is everything okay?" Francesca asked the man, trying to remain calm. The man raised his hands, pretending innocence. "Oh, excuse me. I just noticed that dog. He looks like one I was looking for." Francesca eyed him suspiciously, holding Luca's hand tightly. "I don't know what you're talking about, but this dog is with us now." The man nodded with an enigmatic smile and slowly walked away. Max continued to stare at him until he was completely out of sight. Francesca couldn't ignore the unease that had crept into her heart. That evening, Francesca decided to call the man who had claimed to be Max's owner. She told him about the encounter with the suspicious man and the dog's unusual behavior. "Do you think someone's trying to take him back?" she asked, worried. "I am not sure," the man replied, his voice tense. "But it's possible. Max isn't an ordinary dog, and if someone knows how special he is, they might want him for not so noble purposes." Francesca shuddered. She didn't want to imagine that someone could have ill intentions toward Max, especially now that he had become part of their family. "I'll keep an eye out," she said finally. "But I won't let anyone take him away." Meanwhile, the hunter they had met in the park reached out again. Upon hearing about the situation, he offered his help. "I know how to track suspicious people," he said seriously. "If that man is trying to steal the dog, we can find out." Francesca hesitated, unsure if she should fully trust him. But Max seemed to appreciate the hunter's presence, which was unusual for the dog. She decided to accept the help, hoping it would be useful. That same night, Francesca heard a noise outside the door. Her heart skipped a beat as she approached to check. Max was already there, standing in front of the door, growling softly. Francesca peered through the peephole and saw a shadowy figure trying to force the lock. "Who's there?" she shouted, trying to stay calm. The figure stopped for a moment, then disappeared into the darkness. Max barked furiously, scratching the door as if chasing the intruder. Francesca immediately called the hunter and told him what had happened. "This is serious," the man said. "You need to file a report and set up security cameras. I'll help you protect Max." Francesca nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. She wouldn't let anyone endanger her family or the dog that had saved her son. Despite the tension, Max seemed more protective than ever. He stayed close to Luca, monitoring every movement around them. Luca, for his part, seemed to find in the dog an endless source of comfort. "Max is my hero," he often said, gently petting him. Francesca knew that the bond between the dog and the child was special, but now it was clear that Max would give his life to protect them. The next morning, Francesca woke with a sense of unease that she couldn't shake. The events of the previous night continued to haunt her. Looking out the window, she saw Max sitting on the lawn, his gaze fixed on the edge of their garden. He was vigilant, as if waiting for something or someone. As she prepared breakfast for Luca, a familiar car pulled up in front of the house. It was the hunter. He got out of the vehicle with a serious expression, carrying some documents and an electronic device. "I've done some research," he said, entering with purposeful steps. "And I think there are more people involved in this matter." Francesca looked at him with concern. "What do you mean?" The hunter explained that he had traced some suspicious activities in the area. The man they had seen in the park was part of an organization looking to recover trained animals to sell them illegally. Max, with his extraordinary abilities, was likely one of the main targets. "They must have heard about the truck accident," he continued. "And now they're desperately searching for him." Francesca felt frozen. "What can we do to protect him?" "First of all, I've installed security cameras around the house," the hunter said, showing the device he had brought with him. "And we need to keep a close watch on Max. Never leave him alone." That evening, after putting Luca to bed, Francesca sat with Max beside her. She stroked the dog slowly, lost in her thoughts. She had developed such a strong bond with him, and seeing him so protective of Luca gave her a sense of security she hadn't felt in years. But now, with this new threat emerging, she wondered if she was doing the right thing. Max deserved a peaceful life, free from danger, and maybe staying with them wasn't the best solution for him. "What should I do, Max?" she murmured, looking into his eyes. The dog responded by laying his head on her lap, almost as if to reassure her that his place was here, with them. The following day, the man who had claimed to be Max's owner came to visit again. He brought some documents that proved Max had been originally trained as a rescue dog for an international rescue team. "These dogs are extraordinary," he explained. "They're trained to help in emergency situations, and Max is one of the best we've ever had. But if you want to keep him, I won't stop you. It seems he's found a new mission with you." Francesca was silent for a moment, her heart torn. On one hand, she knew Max had a special gift, and he could save more lives. On the other hand, the bond with Luca was now inseparable. "I need to think about it," she finally said. That night, another shadow moved around the house. The cameras installed by the hunter picked up movement, and a discreet alarm alerted Francesca. She jumped up and saw Max already in position in front of the door. When Francesca looked at the footage, she saw two men with flashlights trying to approach the house. One of them seemed to be the same man they had met in the park. She immediately called the hunter and the man who had claimed to be Max's owner. They both arrived quickly, and the two suspicious men fled before they could be confronted. The next morning, Francesca decided it was time to act. She spoke to Luca, explaining that Max was special and that some bad people wanted to take him away. "But they can't," Luca protested, tears in his eyes. "Max is my friend." Francesca hugged him tightly. "I know, sweetheart. We'll do everything we can to protect him. But it might be necessary to find a way to keep him safe, even if that means letting him go for a while." Max watched the scene, as if he understood every word. He approached Luca, licking his hand, and the boy hugged him even tighter. The next night was different. Max seemed more vigilant than usual, his eyes constantly fixed on the windows. Francesca, sitting next to him, felt that something was about to happen. There was an unnatural silence in the air, broken only by the soft rustle of leaves moved by the wind. Around midnight, a distinct sound made Francesca jump, a broken branch near the side of the house. Max jumped to his feet, barking with a ferocity Francesca had never seen before. Looking through the security cameras, Francesca saw 3 figures moving stealthily toward the back of the house. One of them was carrying a tool that seemed to be a crowbar. Francesca's heart was pounding. She grabbed the phone and called the hunter, who had insisted she alert him in case of an emergency. "They're trying to break in," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Keep the door closed and stay calm." "I am on my way," the hunter replied, his tone decisive. Max was already positioned in front of the back door, his fur standing on end and his teeth exposed. Francesca picked up Luca and took him to an inner room, locking the door. "Don't be afraid, sweetheart. Max will protect us," she whispered, trying to stay calm for the child's sake. One of the men began forcing the back door open. Francesca heard the metallic sound of the crowbar against the lock. Max was ready. With a powerful leap, he launched himself at the door, barking furiously. The sound startled the intruders, but they didn't stop. When they finally managed to force the door open, Max pounced on the first man, knocking him to the ground with a deep growl. The other 2 backed off, surprised by the dog's reaction. Just then, sirens could be heard in the distance. The hunter arrived moments later, accompanied by local police, who had been alerted during the drive. The men tried to flee, but were quickly blocked. Francesca watched everything from the window, Luca tightly held in her arms. Max, still positioned in front of the door, seemed ready to defend the family at any cost. "It's incredible," one of the officers said to the hunter. "This dog practically stopped the attack on his own." After the arrest of the intruders, the police found compromising documents in their backpacks. They contained detailed information about Max and his training. One of the men confessed they had been trying to recover him to sell him to an organization that used trained animals for unethical purposes. The hunter, along with Max's supposed owner, examined the documents. These men were part of an international animal trafficking organization, the hunter explained. Max wasn't just a rescue dog. He was one of the most valuable ones they had ever trained. Francesca felt sick at the thought that Max was considered just a valuable object by these people. She looked at the dog, who was now back beside Luca, licking his face to calm him down. "It doesn't matter what those documents say," Francesca said determinedly. "Max is part of our family now." While the situation seemed resolved, the hunter warned Francesca that the threat wasn't completely eliminated. "If this is an international organization, they might try to come back. We need to be ready." Francesca nodded, but the thought frightened her. She couldn't imagine losing Max, especially after everything they had been through together. In the following days, Francesca's house was put under protection, with additional cameras installed and an advanced alarm system. Max continued to watch over them, but he also showed a sweet and affectionate side toward Luca, who seemed to trust him completely. One evening, while Luca was petting Max before going to sleep, he said, "Mom, Max isn't just a dog. He's our angel." Francesca smiled, wiping away a tear. "Yes, sweetheart. That's exactly what he is." In the days following the attack, Francesca worked hard to rebuild a semblance of normalcy. However, the atmosphere at home had changed. Even though the police reassured the family that the intruders had been arrested, the hunter kept telling her that the danger wasn't entirely over. Max seemed to sense this tension. He was always vigilant, accompanying Francesca everywhere and constantly keeping Luca under his protection. One evening, as Francesca was putting Luca to bed, the boy asked a question that caught her off guard. "Mom, do you think Max chose to stay with us because he knows we need him?" Francesca paused for a moment, looking at her child, Yes, sweetheart. I believe Max came to us for a special reason. He's here to protect us and give us strength. Luca smiled and petted Max, who was lying next to the bed. Then we must never let him go. Those words weighed heavily in Francesca's heart. She had begun to wonder if keeping Max was truly the best choice for him. It was clear that the dog was bonded to them, but at the same time, she knew that his presence was attracting unwanted attention. One morning, as she was taking Luca to the park, Francesca noticed a man sitting on a bench who seemed to be watching them. He was a new face, different from the intruders from the previous night. Max, who was usually calm, began growling softly. Francesca approached cautiously, keeping Luca close to her. "Can I help you?" she asked, trying to maintain a firm tone. The man looked up and smiled. "Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. My name's David, and I am a dog trainer. I've heard about Max and his story. Can I approach?" Francesca hesitated, but Max, strangely, didn't seem bothered by the presence of this man. She nodded slowly, watching carefully every movement he made. David approached cautiously and squatted in front of Max, making respectful eye contact. "He's incredible," he said, gently petting the dog. "This dog has something special. It's rare to see such a strong bond between an animal and a family." Francesca relaxed slightly but remained cautious. "Why are you here?" she asked. David explained that he had been contacted by the hunter to offer help. "I know you're concerned about Max's safety and your family. I want to help you understand how to protect him better and maybe learn more about his past." That evening, David carefully examined Max, observing his behavior and reactions. After an hour of analysis, he made a discovery that left Francesca speechless. "Max isn't just a rescue dog," he said. "He was trained for extremely delicate missions, probably for search and rescue operations in conflict areas. He's an exceptional animal, and this explains why he attracts so much attention." Francesca felt a mix of pride and concern. "What does this mean for us?" David sat next to her. "It means you need to be prepared. Max is a target for people who want to exploit him. But it also means he's perfectly capable of protecting your family." Meanwhile, the bond between Max and Luca continued to grow. One evening, while they were playing together in the garden, Luca tripped and fell. Before Francesca could intervene, Max was already by the boy's side, licking his face to comfort him. "It's all good, Mom," Luca said, laughing. "Max always protects me." Francesca realized that the dog wasn't just a guardian, but also a true friend to her son. Each day that passed, it became clearer that Max had become an indispensable part of their life. Despite the apparent calm, the hunter received worrying information. A group linked to the animal trafficking organization was actively searching for Max. "We can't let our guard down," Francesca warned. "We need to be ready for anything." With the help of David, the hunter, and the man who had claimed to be Max's owner, Francesca began planning additional security measures. She knew she would never allow anyone to take Max away from her, but she needed to find a balance between protecting him and ensuring her family's safety. The days passed in apparent tranquility, but Francesca knew that this calm was fragile. Max continued to be vigilant, watching every movement around the house, and Luca kept repeating how special his four-legged friend was. One evening, while Francesca was reading a story to Luca to get him to sleep, Max suddenly started growling. He moved toward the window, staring into the darkness with attentive eyes. Francesca stood up to check, her heart racing. Through the window, she saw shadows moving stealthily toward the house. Francesca ran to the phone to call the hunter, but Max started barking furiously, running toward the door. A loud noise echoed. Someone was trying to break in by forcing the lock. Francesca hurried to lock Luca in the inner room, just as she had done during the previous attack. "Stay here, sweetheart. Don't come out for any reason," she said, trying to hide the fear in her voice. Max, meanwhile, had already positioned himself in front of the door, ready to defend the house. His growls were low and deep, a clear warning to the intruders. This time, the intruders didn't stop at the door. With a loud crack, they managed to break through. Max lunged at the first man, knocking him to the ground with surprising strength. The other two backed off, startled by the dog's response. Francesca, hidden in a corner, watched the scene with her heart in her throat. She grabbed the phone and called the police, praying they would arrive in time. The intruders, however, didn't seem intent on retreating. One of them pulled out a stick, trying to hit Max, but the dog was faster, dodging the blow and barking furiously to draw attention. Just when it seemed the situation would spiral out of control, sirens could be heard in the distance. The intruders, panicked, tried to flee, but the hunter arrived just in time, blocking their escape. "Stop! You're not going anywhere!" he shouted, aiming a weapon at them. The police arrived shortly after, arresting the men and ending the attack. Francesca let out a sigh of relief, holding Luca close. During the interrogation, one of the men confessed that they were working for an organization that wanted Max at all costs. "This dog is worth millions," he said with a grin. "We won't stop until he's ours." The confession made it clear how dangerous the situation had become. Francesca realized that keeping Max with her meant putting not just the dog but her entire family at risk. That night, while sitting with the hunter and David in the living room, Francesca faced a difficult choice. "I can't let him go," she said, stroking Max. "But I can't put Luca in danger either." The hunter nodded, understanding. "We could find a safe place for Max, at least until the situation calms down." David intervened. "Or we could work to dismantle this organization. If we eliminate the threat at its core, Max could stay with you." Francesca looked at Max, who was watching her with trusting eyes. She knew the dog would do anything to protect them, but she couldn't ignore the risks. After a long discussion, Francesca decided that the best option was to temporarily entrust Max to a safe haven. "It's not goodbye," she said, tears in her eyes. "It's just a see you later, until we're all safe." Luca protested, hugging Max tightly. "No, Mom. Max is my best friend. We can't let him go." Francesca knelt beside him, trying to explain the situation. "I know, sweetheart. But we're doing this to protect him. Max will come back to us, I promise." Max seemed to understand. He rested his head on Luca's lap, licking his face as if to reassure him. The decision to temporarily part from Max weighed heavily on Francesca's heart. As the safe haven prepared to welcome the dog, the atmosphere at home was somber. Luca barely spoke anymore and spent his days hugging Max, as if he wanted to memorize every moment with him. The hunter and David worked tirelessly to ensure that Max was transferred to a protected and isolated facility. It was a facility run by experts, far from the influence of the organization that had been trying to retrieve him. "This place is designed to protect at-risk animals," David explained to Francesca. "Max will be safe until we dismantle the trafficking network." Francesca nodded, but the thought of not having Max nearby made her feel empty. "And if we can't stop them?" she asked, her voice trembling. "It won't happen," the hunter replied. "We'll stop them. I promise you." The day of the transfer came too quickly. Max seemed to sense Francesca and Luca's anguish, and didn't leave their side all morning. When the time came, Luca burst into tears. "Why does he have to go?" he cried, hugging Max with all his strength. Francesca knelt beside him, trying to stay calm. "Sweetheart, Max needs to stay in a safe place for a while. But he'll come back, I promise." Max, as if he understood the gravity of the moment, licked Luca's face, then turned to Francesca, resting his head on her hands. Francesca stroked him, feeling a lump in her throat. "Come back to us, Max. We're your family." The hunter took Max's leash and led him to the vehicle. As the car pulled away, Francesca and Luca stayed on the doorstep, watching until it disappeared from sight. Meanwhile, the hunter and David intensified the investigation into the organization. With the help of the police, they managed to track down other members of the network and discover a storage facility where several trained animals were being illegally kept. "This is where we need to strike," said the hunter, examining the maps and the information they had gathered. If we can dismantle this storage facility, we can seriously weaken them. David nodded, but he knew the operation would be risky. We need to be ready for anything. These people stop at nothing. As the team prepared for the operation, Francesca received a disturbing phone call. "We know you have the dog," said a cold voice on the other end. "And we want him back. Don't make things difficult." Francesca felt the blood freeze in her veins. "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, trying to stay calm. "Oh, you know very well. Well, give you another chance. But if you don't cooperate, there will be consequences." The call was abruptly ended, leaving Francesca trembling. She immediately called the hunter, who ordered her not to leave the house and to keep Luca safe. The team decided to accelerate the operation. That very night, the hunter, David, and a police team stormed the storage facility. They found several animals locked in terrible conditions and a large quantity of documents that confirmed the scale of the organization. But the most shocking discovery was a detailed plan to kidnap Max directly from the safe haven. "They were ready for anything," said the hunter, showing the documents to Francesca. "Fortunately, we stopped them in time. With the arrest of several members of the organization and the rescue of the animals, the situation seemed to be finally turning around." But Francesca knew that the real test would be bringing Max back home without attracting further attention. The hunter and David worked to ensure that Max's return was discreet and safe. When the day came, Francesca and Luca eagerly awaited the return of their four-legged friend. The tension in the air was palpable as Francesca and Luca waited for Max's return. Every outside noise seemed amplified, and Francesca couldn't stop checking the clock. They had planned everything meticulously to avoid the organization intercepting Max's transfer from the safe haven to the house, but the anxiety wouldn't let her rest. The hunter had coordinated Max's transport with a trusted team. The goal was to bring him home via a remote route, changing vehicles twice to confuse any potential followers. "If everything goes according to plan, Max will be home by evening," the hunter had said that morning. But Francesca couldn't shake the feeling that something would go wrong. Meanwhile, David, who stayed at the safe haven to oversee the transfer, noticed a suspicious car parked not far from the facility. The occupants seemed to be watching the entrance carefully. "They found the safe haven," he told the hunter by phone. "We need to move immediately." The hunter, already on his way to Francesca, made a U-turn and headed back. "We can't take any chances. Let's change the plan completely." They decided to use a different vehicle and move Max along an even more remote route. Despite their precautions, the group was intercepted halfway. Two unidentified vehicles blocked the road, and armed men stepped out to confront the hunter and his team. Max, inside the vehicle, began barking furiously. The hunter, keeping calm, stepped out with his hands raised. "I don't know what you want, but you're not getting this dog." One of the men, clearly the leader, stepped forward. "That dog doesn't belong to you. He's ours, and we'll take him back, by force if necessary." But as he spoke, the hunter noticed one of the men moving toward the vehicle. Max, feeling threatened, delivered a powerful blow to the window with his paws, drawing attention to himself. Suddenly, Max did something unexpected. He took advantage of a half-open window to leap out of the vehicle. Despite the confusion, he charged at one of the men, knocking him down with extraordinary energy. The hunter seized the moment to engage in a direct confrontation with the leader of the organization. Max continued to protect the team, attacking anyone who came too close. Despite being outnumbered, the dog showed once again his extraordinary determination. Just as the situation seemed to be spiraling, sirens could be heard in the distance. The police, alerted by the hunter before the transfer, arrived just in time to neutralize the threat. The men were arrested and taken away, but not before the leader of the organization made one last threat. "This isn't over. We'll have that dog, no matter what." Max, now exhausted but still vigilant, returned to the hunter's side, his gaze fixed on the scene. After the confrontation, the hunter made a quick decision. Max had to return home immediately, without further detours. This time, escorted by the police, they managed to complete the journey without incidents. When the vehicle arrived in front of Francesca's house, Luca ran outside shouting with joy. "Max! You're back!" The dog charged toward him, barking happily. Francesca, watching the scene, finally felt relieved. Max was home, and now everything seemed possible. That evening, as Max rested at the foot of Luca's bed, Francesca made a decision. "I'll never let anyone put us in danger again. Max is part of our family, and we'll do everything to protect him." The hunter nodded. "Now that we've caught some of the culprits, we can work on dismantling the entire network. But it will take time. In the meantime, Max will be safe here." Francesca stroked Max, feeling immense gratitude for this extraordinary dog. She knew their lives had changed forever, but now she felt ready to face anything. The night was calm in Francesca's house. Max rested next to Luca's bed, but his ears were always alert, ready to catch any suspicious sound. Francesca couldn't sleep. Despite the arrest of part of the organization, the threat was not entirely gone. Around midnight, Max jumped to his feet, his low growl filling the room. Francesca jumped up and went to the window. In the dark, she saw shadows moving stealthily in the garden. Fear struck her like lightning. Despite their precautions, someone had managed to track them down. Francesca rushed to call the hunter as Max positioned himself in front of the door, ready to protect the house once again. A loud noise shattered the silence. The living room window broke, and two men sneaked into the house. Max immediately charged at the first intruder, knocking him to the ground with surprising strength. The second man tried to strike Max with an improvised weapon, but the dog dodged the blow, barking furiously to attract attention. Francesca, trembling, took Luca to the inner room, just as she had during the previous attack. "Don't worry, sweetheart. Max will protect us," she whispered, holding him close. In the living room, Max kept facing the intruders. Despite their numerical advantage, the dog showed extraordinary courage and determination. Every time one of them tried to approach, Max pushed him back with ferocity. Suddenly, a third man appeared, this time armed with a gun. Max stopped, eyeing him carefully, evaluating the situation. The man raised the weapon, pointing it at him. But just at that moment, the headlights illuminated the living room. The hunter and the police had arrived. The intruders, caught off guard, tried to flee, but were quickly stopped by the police. Max, despite being visibly tired, positioned himself next to the hunter, as if making sure everything was under control. One of the officers approached Francesca, reassuring her. "It's over. We've got them." Francesca, with tears in her eyes, came out from the inner room with Luca, hugging Max tightly. "You saved our family, once again," she whispered to him, stroking him with gratitude. The hunter approached, bringing with him one of the documents found on the intruders. "We've finally dismantled the entire network," he said. "And Max played a key role. These men won't be a threat anymore." Francesca nodded, but the relief was mixed with profound emotion. She looked at Max, who was now lying on the floor, breathing heavily but with a satisfied look. In the following days, Max's story spread throughout the community. Neighbors gathered to celebrate the dog's bravery, organizing a small ceremony in his honor. Luca, beaming with happiness, prepared a drawing for Max, depicting him as a true hero. "He's our protector," the child proudly said. Francesca felt a wave of gratitude for this extraordinary dog who had entered their lives so unexpectedly but had brought with him strength, courage, and unconditional love. With the threat finally eliminated, Francesca and Luca were able to start rebuilding a normal life. Max, while still maintaining his vigilant nature, seemed more relaxed, as if he knew the danger had passed. One evening, as they watched the sunset from the garden, Francesca stroked Max and said, "You're more than a dog to us. You're family." Luca joined her, hugging Max. "And I'll always be your best friend," he added, smiling. With the criminal network dismantled and the intruders arrested, Francesca's house returned to being a place of peace. Max, their tireless protector, resumed living with them, But something had changed in him. His behavior was calmer, almost as if he had finally understood he was safe and truly belonged to that family. Luca, who had lived moments of fear and courage alongside his four-legged friend, never left Max's side. They were inseparable, and every day the bond between them grew deeper. One morning, while they were playing together in the garden, Francesca watched the scene with a smile. The sun filtered through the trees, and the sound of Luca's laughter mixed with Max's happy barks. It was a scene she could never have imagined just a few months earlier, when their life had been so different. A few weeks later, Francesca received an unexpected call. It was the hunter, who told her, "Francesca, they want to recognize Max's bravery. There's a ceremony organized by the local association to celebrate animals that have performed heroic acts. Max will be the guest of honor." Francesca accepted with pride, knowing how well-deserved that recognition was. During the ceremony, Max received a special medal and a certificate for his bravery. The crowd applauded, and Luca, beaming with pride, held up Max's award to show everyone. "Max is the best dog in the world," he declared enthusiastically, earning a warm round of applause. Over time, Francesca was able to regain control of her life. The emotional scars left by the past events began to heal, thanks to the love and support of Luca and Max. "I don't know how I would have managed without you," she said one evening to Max, stroking him as he rested beside her on the sofa. "You've been our hero, but more than anything, you're part of our family." Max lifted his gaze, wagging his tail gently, as if to say that he would always watch over them. Max's story became an inspiration for many in the community. The courage and loyalty of a stray dog, who had become the protector of a family, demonstrated how love and determination could overcome any adversity. Francesca decided to share their experience with others, telling the story of Max at an event dedicated to raising awareness about animal welfare and adoption. "Every animal has priceless value," she said to the audience. "Max didn't just save our life, but he taught us what it truly means to love unconditionally." As the seasons passed, Francesca, Luca, and Max continued living their lives together, building happy memories and looking toward the future with hope. Max remained Luca's faithful companion, protecting him and playing with him every day. One evening, as the sun set, Luca hugged Max and said, "Thank you for being my best friend." "I love you, Max." Francesca, watching that scene, felt her heart fill with gratitude. They had gone through difficult times, but together they had found the strength to overcome them. Max wasn't just a dog. He was the symbol of their resilience and their love as a family. Max's story and his family's journey remind us of how special animals can be. If you enjoyed this story, leave a comment and share your thoughts. What would you do if an animal suddenly entered your life and changed it forever? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories and leave a like to support our work. And remember, love and courage can be found in the most unexpected places. Thank you for listening to our story.